So today's Halloween, and in light of that, I decided to talk about a spooky film in the festive season. And I've realised now I should probably be wearing like a scary t-shirt as well. Ooh! Nothing scarier than Mia Goth and tie-dye. Now, originally I thought, because it's Halloween, I should talk about something kind of scary, and I was going to talk about my favourite horror film of all time. But I've already done that. So instead, I've decided to talk about a horror film which I feel is kind of underappreciated in some ways. Some people kind of call it a rip-off, some people call it a cult classic. Regardless of what side you're on, I think we can all agree that it is kind of a really underrated horror film to some degree. It was cheaply made, it was released very limitedly, and it has one of the craziest endings of all time. So I guess the question that I have to ask is, have you seen Sleepaway Camp?
Dear Mom and Dad, I've been at a sleepaway camp for almost 3 weeks, and I'm getting very scared.
Sleepaway Camp is a 1983 slasher film written and directed by Robert Hiltskam, and it stars a very wide cast of little actors and actresses that appeared in a lot of these very low-budget horror films. For example, Mike Kellin, and of course in the lead role of Angela, we have Felicia Rose. Now, before I even go into any of this, we might as well get the comparisons out of the way. It's very similar to Friday the 13th. Like, absurdly similar. There's a bunch of kids that go to a summer camp, creepy stuff starts happening, dead bodies start appearing here and there, and the third act is just a huge climax of the last night before the killer is finally caught and put to rest. Well, put to rest to some degree. The film opens in 1975 with John Baker and his boyfriend Lenny as they take John's kids out to a boating trip, the two children being Peter and Angela. Although there's an accident that leaves 3 of them dead, John, Lenny and Peter. Now, if you're someone that's never seen this film, or you have, you probably sat there for the first hour realising how unrelated any of that is. We obviously have the character of Angela that spends a lot of the screen time being very quiet and shy around everyone else, and we kind of question on how badly this boating accident affected her as a child. And as the story unravels, we learn more and more about her character and more about the actual camp itself. Actually, that's not true at all. There really isn't all that much to the camp, it's just Friday the 13th camp. I guess the reason why I really want to highlight this week specifically and try and get people to watch it is because I do think that it stands on its own 2 legs. I mean, in the 80s and 90s, films about kids going to a summer camp and a murderer being there and the whole story unraveling from there typically was quite overdone and boring by the time that this had come out, and this came out very early on. That being said, I think it has a lot to offer. It has the typical annoying bratty characters at the camp that you kind of just root for to get killed. It has the heroes that you kind of root for to survive as well, although there is still plenty of twists and turns that come along the story that make you question, what the fuck is going on? It's also quite provocative in the way that it portrays some of its older characters as being a lot more creepier and sort of exploitative of the children going to this camp. Like, no one working there is there because they want to get off for the summer and get paid. They're there because they're creeps. And that is seen so perfectly with the cook, who I can't remember the name of for the life of me. But his character specifically is full of this gross, disgusting feeling towards these children that you kind of just can't help but root for him to get fucking butchered. And that leads me to the kills. The most important thing about any slasher or horror film where you know most of the cast is going to end up dead by the end of it is the kills. Are they done well? Do they look cool? And as many people know from watching some of my videos, I fucking love practical horror effects, and I think they do a pretty good job in this. Sure, the film was made quite cheaply, so it strays away from some of the violence at times, and you can't help but kind of feel a bit disappointed if you're there to see some really gory freak-out stuff, but the stuff that you do see is still very well executed, and it fits perfectly into this really strange film. The film was originally made for $350,000, which for movies nowadays is kind of insane. Obviously, to adjust for inflation, that would equal to around about 1.1 million nowadays, which is still so absurdly low for a horror film. But then again, it makes you realize you can kind of pump these things out very easily with a very low budget, and for the most part, they pay out. I mean, look at Blumhouse's strategy. They make the cheapest horror films. It doesn't matter if they do well or not, because at the end of the day, they're always going to make at least that little bit of profit, or at least break even, kind of. Some other highlights I have for Sleepaway Camp to leave you with to try and get you to watch this is that it has this very eerie score that comes in at times. Obviously, it's not all that effective in comparison to some of them, or as iconic to something like Halloween or, again, Friday the 13th. I need a counter for how many times I've mentioned that in this video. It still works. It delivers this eeriness, sort of creepy feeling in your body. You feel slightly unsettled, and it works perfectly in what emotions it's trying to convey to the audience. It's shot traditionally like any other horror film from that era as well. Lots of wide shots of all the kids playing, or some POV shots of the killer, which again are just as effective as they were in Halloween. And of course, most importantly, it has that mystery element. You want to know more and more about this killer and who they are. And although the answers you get at the very end of the film are maybe slightly rushed to some extent, I think they deliver a perfect shock to the audience that maybe some wouldn't expect. At least I know I didn't expect it when I first watched it. So I think it does have a great payoff, and it executes its ideas very well. It's hilarious as well because when Sleepaway Camp came out originally, it wasn't viewed all that well by critics or audiences. It was just a Friday the 13th ripoff, which over time people have kind of strayed away from that. It's got a bit of a cult following now. It's effective and a product of its time, but it's still aware of what the audience wants from these types of films, and I think it delivers pretty well on the mystery elements, the slasher elements, and of course, the killer. I highly recommend Sleepaway Camp. I think it is a very underrated horror gem. I mean, this video is coming out Halloween evening. If you have no plans, just tuck away and go and watch this for the first time, because at least you'll have something creepy to watch on the creepiest night of the year. So I am just about to finish editing this video. It's all done. And I just learned that Kenan Thompson is apparently attempting to remake this film. This was announced a month ago. My thoughts on it, I felt like I had to include it in the video. I don't really give a shit that he's doing it. They do this with all these horror franchises, and they never really seem to work out. Whatever, just felt it was worth mentioning. Clearly they had some influence on some people if people are still trying to make them, but who fucking cares? Just watch the original. Thank you very much for watching once again. I fucking love this movie. I think it's great. I think it's so dated to an extent, but still very fun. I recommend checking it out. I've never seen the sequels. I probably will one day, but for now, Sleepaway Camp is one of the best low-budget horror films of all time. I will see you in the next one. Have a happy Halloween, and thanks again.
They're too young to even understand what's on your mind.
Ben, good buddy, there ain't no such thing as being too young. You're just too old.